Welcome ladies and gentlemen, my name's Diachronicos here on this Destiny 2 video, and today we're going to be taking a look at my top 10 Warlock Exotics in Destiny 2 Season of the Witch. And of course, as always, I have made a spreadsheet for this video with all the ranks and ratings for all the different exotics in the game for the Warlocks, as well as the previous season stuff as well. And that can still be found at my Discord server, link in the description down below. And in general, in case you're wondering, not much has changed this season since last season. The top 10 is exactly the same, different options. There were some slight variations and reassessments, but for the most part, Warlocks are essentially the same for both PvE and PvP. Even after the changes to the Titan meta with Antaeus wards, the meta for Titans is mostly the same as well, which means the Warlocks have to respond the same way in PvP. And furthermore, the best part about Warlocks in PvE is still gonna be that well. We have had word that they're gonna be nerfing well maybe next season, or maybe even with final shape, so well may change, and a lot of other stuff will go with it. Which is why it's so important to understand what the top 10 are instead of just focusing on well-based stuff. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. On screen right now, this is my spreadsheet. Color-coded recommendations, ranks for both PvE and PvP for all the different Warlock Exotics in the game, and again, you can also click on the other tabs to the other different classes in case you're wondering about those as well. Without further ado, let's get started. At number 10, we have the Aon Soul, which is essentially the same as it always has been, and it's the same as all the other Aon Exotic. If you don't know, you get a certain number of bonuses for having it, and more bonuses if your teammates also have an Aon Exotic, which there is one for every class. However, the most useful and the most commonly used version of this is to use it with only one person with it and using Sective Insight to be able to spawn in special and heavy ammo by finishing majors and champions. And in a Grandmaster Nightfall, the ability to spawn in heavy ammo for your teammates by finishing a champion is extremely powerful. So it's essentially just a good default option for Grandmaster Nightfall. And in most other things, you don't need that much more heavy ammo, and there's not a lot of other champion options, so Aon Soul is literally only used for Grandmaster, but for Grandmasters, it is really good. Following that at number 9, we have the Rain of Fire, which is the quintessential fusion rifle or linear fusion rifle exotic for the Warlocks. If you don't know it, you can air dodge to reload all of your weapons and improve your airborne effectiveness with fusion rifles and linear fusion rifles, which, by the way, Vex Mythoclast counts as a fusion rifle, which is the main use for this exotic. And when you get kills with those fusion rifles or linears, again, including Vex Mythoclast, you get Radiant, which is a good damage boost that's very easy to get from fusion rifle kills, on top of other moderate airborne effectiveness stuff for fusion rifles. So TLDR, if you like using Vex Mythoclast or even fusion rifles in general, this is one of the best exotics for you. And something that's important to note is that technically Vex did get nerfed from a 390 RPM to a 360, but it's supposedly going to be getting a big buff coming soon. And it can often be even better in PvE with the rapid fire fusion rifles, which again, I think are some of the best options in the game. Following that at number 8, we have the Eye of Another World, somewhat of a good default option for stat boosting. If you don't know, it increases the regeneration speed of your grenade, melee, and rift abilities. Technically, it does not increase recovery, but it increases the rift recharge. And it kind of works in a weird sliding scale. If you have very low stats in a particular category related to grenade, melee, or rift, it'll increase it by a larger amount. Let's say you have a tier 2 or 3, it may give you 5 tiers on top of that. If you have a tier 9, it'll only give you 1 tier. And if you have a tier 10, it does give you a little bit of benefit above tier 10. And on top of that, it highlights priority targets, which is usually enemies with lower health. However, these days in PvP, Warlocks do gravitate more towards Ophidians and Transversives. Eye of Another World can be a decent option for ability spamming stuff and defensive options. Following that at number 7, we have the Stag, which is one of the best, if not the best, rift-based exotic in the game, especially for the Crucible. If you don't know, your rift provides damage reduction to you and allied guardians, which is really beneficial. I think it's a ×2. And you get rift energy whenever you're critically wounded, which should be happening all the time whenever you're obviously shooting at enemies. And when you die, you drop a healing rift on your corpse, making it really good for Trials of Osiris or revive based game modes to help your team have resistance and healing to revive you. And most of the time I do see this on Arc for the Arc Souls, because you're using so many rifts, giving your teammates so much damage resistance and extra damage in the form of the Arc Soul. And I think they buffed Arc Souls in the last few seasons to make them more consistent. Following that at number 6, probably the best overall exotic for Warlocks, the Ostromancy, with an 8 out of 10 in both PvE and PvP. And if you haven't heard of it, your cold snap grenades have an additional charge, which is great for overflow charging, and recharges quicker on direct impact, not only bonking the target with your grenade, but those little trails that freeze enemies also give you 50% of your grenade. So if you get the bonk and the freeze, you get your full grenade back. And if you freeze that target, it shatters, sends out more stuff. I think those also count and give you more grenade back. And most of the time when people are going to be using this is going to be with the Bleak Quattro turrets, which freeze enemies all over the place, allowing you to throw down one turret and then continue throwing cold snap grenades to get more of those grenades. Which the turrets don't technically proc this effect, but the regular grenades do. And every time you throw more grenades, if you have those mods on your character that gives you more melee and more rift abilities from using your grenade, you're going to be cycling these things a lot. And frankly, freezing everything in PvE or PvP is extremely good. If you pair that up with Osteostriga or Wither Horde or some big bada boom kind of weapons, you're gonna have a great time. Following that at number 5, we have the Sunbracers, which is probably the fan favorite, the exotic that I probably use the most on Warlock because, let's face it, Well is the best super in the game, Solar Warlock in general, and those extra effects on their grenades are some of the most fun in the game as well. And Sunbracers just takes that to the next level. If you haven't heard it, increases the duration of solar grenades, which is not all of them, just the one called a solar grenade, which should be called a sun grenade or something. And whenever you get solar melee kills, you get infinite solar grenades for like 5 seconds, which if you have the aspect of flame, do those extra little molten shoot off lava things, which on big body targets like the Last Wish Riven boss, you can actually do some of the best DPS in the entire game just with a ton of sun grenades. And one of the best ways I found to trigger this is with the Incinerator Snap, because if you shoot the Incinerator Snap at one target, it's very likely to ignite that target immediately, and the ignition kills count for this exotic's proc. And when you're in the air, when you get kills, like for example when you're throwing those grenades, you get your melee back, and you can do this over and over again. The only downside here is that it does require a melee kill, specifically a charged melee kill, and if you mess that up, you do have to wait for the next cycle, unlike something like Contraverse Hold that doesn't require a kill. We'll talk about that a little bit later. After that, at number 4, probably one of the best PvP exotics in the game, just in general, the Ophidian aspect, which is extremely simple. Weapons ready and reload very quickly. So it's essentially an increase to handling and reload speed, which allows you to swap faster, sprint to fire faster, aim down sights faster, reload faster, which is obviously something that's very useful no matter what you're doing in Crucible, especially for heavier weapons like 120 hand cannons or aggressive shotguns. You could also use those particular mods on something else. You don't need a reloader, you don't need a swapper on your armor, you can use those on other things. And it also used to increase your melee range by like a whole meter before, but they nerfed it. But it's still an amazing exotic. And the fact that it works on everything is great because you really just put it on, forget about it, it's always going to be a benefit. Following that at number 3, we have the Veritys Brow. In my opinion, probably the most underrated best exotic in the game. And most of the time it's because it's a bit complicated. So let me draw it out for you. First of all, you have to have a weapon that matches your subclass. So if you're on a solar subclass, have a solar weapon. Whenever you get kills with that particular weapon, you get death throws. And when you have death throws, you get grenade energy, and you also get 20% more grenade damage per stack, up to 5 stacks. And whenever you throw a grenade with death throws, which obviously you're going to be doing, all your teammates around you get greatly increased grenade regeneration for a short period of time. And this greatly increased, I think it's like 5,000% or something. I forget the exact number, but it's really fast. They're getting the grenades. And the fact that this works on literally every subclass, it's universal, and can even be used on Strand, which is not about the grenade damage, but giving you those bonuses to charge faster and work with your team, is something that's really nice, especially since there are really not a lot of Strand-based exotics. This is universal and works with it. Especially after the Starfire Protocol nerf, Veritys Brow did kind of rise up as one of the better options for solar, other than obviously Sunbracers, and Veritys Brow, with those double exploding fusion grenades that we use with Starfire, doing even more damage, up to 100% more damage, be pretty damn saucy. Following it at number 2, we have the Transverse of Steps. Alongside the Ophidian aspects are some of the most common and most powerful options in the Crucible. And this one, again, is very simple. You increase your sprint speed, and after a short time after sprinting, your currently equipped weapon is automatically loaded, which the second part really helps with slow loading weapons like shotguns or big weapons. And that first part, although very simple, like all the other speed boots, is incredibly useful in an FPS. It allows you to escape fights more easily. It allows you to chase down targets more easily. It allows you to not be shot by enemy shots as easily, just in regular engagements. And the thing that a lot of people forget about is that it increases your sprint speed without increasing your mobility, which most Warlocks in PvP do not want high mobility because higher jump height means they can't use their burst glide as often, they can't Icarus dash as easily, they're spending more time in the air that is not increasing their speed. And Transverse of Steps just increases their sprint speed without mobility. And finally, at number 1, in my opinion, the best Warlock exotic in the game is gonna be Contraverse Hold. Now, obviously, Void Warlock is not the best subclass and build in the game, but as far as what this exotic does and how much it changes Void and makes it great, especially after the well nerfs, is in my opinion worth the #1 slot and a 9 out of 10 in PvE. And if you haven't heard of it, you resist incoming damage while charging your Void grenades, so you have to have that aspect to charge Void grenades. Personally, I like using Vortex. And whenever you get hits with those charged Vortex grenades, you get grenade energy back. If I remember correctly, while using a Vortex grenade, the first hit will give you around 30 to 40%, and the last hit will also give you 30 to 40% because there's enough time between the cooldowns, allowing you to get like 60 to 80% of your grenade back by getting hits, not kills. I mean, you could throw this at a boss and have most of your grenade back getting 0 kills. And if you also have Devour, which is another big part of Void, which people absolutely love, giving your health back getting kills, triggered by ability kills, it also gives you like 20% of your grenade back. So if you throw your grenade, get a first hit and a last hit, and at least 1 to 2 kills, you got your full grenade back. Which, again, is a charge grenade doing a lot more damage with a lot bigger area, or whatever fancy combination of that particular grenade. It also probably has weaken effect, which if you're not using weaken effect on grenades on Void, you are absolutely throwing, because that's one of the best things you can have on it, which helps with boss damage, major killing, crowd control no matter what, creating a Void debuff to then use with other stuff within your stuff. And all you have to do is have the charge grenade stuff and charge it and get a hit. You know how easy it is to hit with a Vortex grenade that's that big? It's freaking easy. And of course, a big thank you to my patrons on Patreon. Specifically, big thank you to Mom and Dad, Kip Bashal, Waffar, Prez, Joe Batten, Robert Strayer, James Osler, Ethan Hodges, Monty Armstrong, Monday, Sue Bachman, Unipanther, Casey Reagan, William Peterson, Benjamin, and Sam Galaxy for the support on Patreon. Hope you guys have a great day. My name's Iconic, and I'll see you guys on the next one.